Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, from whichever corner of the world you're joining us today. First off, I would like to apologize for a bit of a delay in starting our side event. There were some technical glitches. Welcome to the COP26 and to our event, considering tough times that we all are facing due to the ongoing global pandemic. I really hope and wish you and all your loved ones are doing okay during these testing times. I'm Shardul Tiwari, your moderator for today, joining in live from Michigan Technological University, United States, through the e-platform of UN. My counterpart, Amna Elias, is moderating the event in person from Glasgow. Thank you very much again for joining us for this exciting event of catalyzing communities for future leaders amid the global crisis that we all are facing, which makes this gathering even more relevant and showcases our resiliency towards fighting challenges that not just impact our present, but also our futures. As the time warrants, we are doing a hybrid event with our team members present at Glasgow and other members joining us from various parts of the world. Without further ado, let's quickly go through the structure of today's conference. Our session today would be a roundtable conference where our speakers will address some of the critical questions that could potentially shape the role of Youth Alliance in higher education, pivoting the policy discourse of climate change governance. There are two major areas that we would be discussing in our roundtable today: voice of optimism and agents of change. And no, I'm not going to give any spoilers. However, I would tell you that the pivot of today's discussion is youth and YA. YA stands for Youth Environmental Alliance in Higher Education, a multi-institutional transdisciplinary network of universities preparing youth to address today's most pressing environment challenges. Some of the many activities that YA does is hosting international virtual conferences, taking students to COP, as is evident right now, and provide presentation opportunities for students at these events. It also creates educational module for SDGs centered around current case studies from around the globe, and also evaluating the impact of the YA network on students. And today, we have amongst us the fellow youths who are the agents of change representing the Alliance to speak about the optimistic future. Before we dive into this excited roundtable conference, let me take this opportunity of our YA Fellows and introducing you to the YA Fellows. So first of many, we have Amna Elias. Okay, there might be some technical glitches. The second is Jacob Genuisi.
Hi, my name is Jacob Genuisi. I'm a graduate student at Colorado State University studying ecosystem science and sustainability. My interests are mainly in international climate policy and negotiations. And I'm also the lead YA Fellow and the coordinating YA Fellow this year for the Youth Environmental Alliance in higher education.
Thank you so much, Jacob. After Jacob, we have Sarah Withers. I think Sarah will join us later as well. Then we have Shane French. So the presenters that you cannot hear right now, I think they're joining us online. So let's have the introduction of in-person YA Fellows. So Cody Sanford.
Hi, I'm Cody Sanford. I graduated with a degree in ecosystem science and sustainability in spring of 2021 at Colorado State University. I specialized in biogeochemical cycling. I am a co-creator of the Livable Future podcast, and I'm currently working on a carbon sequestration project at Colorado State University.
Thank you very much, Cody. Next, we have Keegan Sheila. I think Keegan is joining us online as well. And the next YA Fellow I would like to introduce is Katie Dyer.
Hi, I'm Katie Barker, and I'm a Yeah, fellow from Colorado State University. I study ecosystem science and sustainability and soil science. And I am kind of a writer turned scientist, now looking at climate mitigation strategies, particularly in agroecosystems and soil biogeochemistry.
Thank you very much, Katie. Next in the line is Matthew Toman.
Hi there, my name is Matthew Twyman. I'm a second-year master's student at Colorado State University, pursuing a certificate in carbon management, and I have also contributed to a graduate research position working on a program that builds functionality that lets students explore spaces in different sectors specific to each country, and they get to play out different scenarios. So I'm looking towards inventory and MRV spaces in the future.
Thank you very much, Matthew Toman. Next is Ayush Chautani.
Hello, I am Ayush Chautani. I'm first year PhD student at Michigan Technological University. I'm studying renewable energy systems, climate change, and energy equity. So I would be working on the project starting next summer on like solar panels and the effect of snow mitigation on solar panels. And part of my job was to look into like energy equity, like how do we make energy or provide power to the ones who do not have it, like the energy poor of the world. This is my first semester with EA, and I'm enrolled in one of the classes with EA. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ayush Chautani. Last but definitely not the least, Kehinde. Okay, I think Kehinde is also not able to join us because of online technicalities, but that should not hold us from the conversation at all. So thank you all for glorious and short introductions given the time that we have in our hands. But before we go into the roundtable, we have active Twitter participants following us. Hence, we have a question for Twitter followers. So what do you think are the most challenging and the biggest barriers to student and youth optimism regarding climate change? And please answer your questions using hashtag #YaYouthNetwork or place them in the chats, right? So let me go, while we get the answers through Twitters, let me go to our panelists now with the same question, right? So I'm gonna start with you, Cody. What do you think are the biggest barriers to student and youth optimism regarding climate change currently?
Yeah, thank you, Shardul. When it comes to barriers to optimism and climate change, there's two big ones that I see. One is the feeling like one person can't achieve real change, and also the feeling like it's too late to make a change. To overcome this, I think we need outreach, education, and we need to uplift youth voices. We need to outreach to the public with solutions that show us a way to solve the climate crisis. Because if we focus on the problem and not the solution, we have a lopsided sense of where we're going. We need to uplift the youth voices because our generations are going to live with the effects of climate change longer than the current ones in charge. So the choices made here at COP26 will affect us all. So thank you for listening to us today.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you very much, Corey. What you're highlighting is on focusing on the solutions, right? So what kind of solutions we are discussing here and not only looking at the problems. And so I'll throw this question again at Ayush Chautani and what Ayush Chautani would like to, what according to him are the most challenging barriers to the students' youth optimism.
Thank you, Shardul. I think the biggest challenges or the barriers in the optimism, it's like student optimism, is to be not able to utilize the maximum potential of the technology they have been given. I guess the generation which is being born now, or the youth right now, are born with the most powerful weapon of all time, that's internet and the access to information. And I fear that the biggest barriers, would be like they get distracted and not be able to use it in the right directions to get the right information to them. And as our generation or the current leaders are not able to do credible action right now, which we can see, our generation, who would be the leaders in coming years, like next decade or so, would be the bridges, and it will be our moral responsibility to connect the coming generations to be able to use their technology so that technology can be a boon, not a barrier for them, so that they can actually do something to change that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Ayush. So what I'm hearing from both of you now here is that we should be talking about solutions, right? So we'll be talking about solutions here. So and this sets up perfectly for the next round, right? So our first main area of discussion is the voice of optimism, right? And both of the speakers are saying that we need to figure out solutions. So let's hear from what optimism looks like, right? So my first question would be for Jacob. Can you say saying that how does multi-institutional nature of YA encourages student optimism?
Thanks, Shardul. Perfect. So I think multi-institutional, networking and working across institutions is one of the most important things we do at our network, and that any potential network could do. It's really important to kind of break out of the echo chamber within your own university or your institution. We kind of get used to doing certain things a certain way, or used to working on only certain ideas. And breaking out of that and kind of seeing what other people are working on is really important to innovate and to come up with new ideas together. So working across institutions, we have institutions such as Colorado State. We have institutions partnering with us in Australia and also in the UK. And we get this kind of global perspective from these institutions who are working on very different challenges, but also interrelated challenges. And so getting to work with these people is really vital to what our network does. It's also important, like I mentioned, to focus on global challenges globally. And you can't do that if you're just working within your single institution. And so it's important to break out of that and get a global perspective. There might be heat waves hitting your region of the world, and that might inspire you to go work on heat-related issues. But other regions have totally different challenges. And so working across those barriers and seeing what other people are working on around the world is really, really vital. And also, on the optimism side of things, you can get an idea for what solutions are coming out. What are people innovating that is optimistic, and what's driving progress around the world. And if you're only in your own institution, it can be kind of hard to see all the progress that's being made around you. And so that's something I really enjoy about the network. We get to work with people who are really innovating and finding solutions to really big challenges on climate change, and get to learn from them and hear their successes and celebrate their successes with them. And it's so important to work across barriers such as different institutions.
No, thank you so much, Jacob. You highlight the key point, right? So the multi-institutional nature of YA is what YA really stands for, right? So one thing I want to move this conversation forward is now that we talk about, YA talks a lot about SDG framework, right? YA uses SDG frameworks. So how does YA emphasis on this SDG as an educational framework facilitates students' optimism? That's what makes me curious. And I think I'll put Matthew on the spot for this one.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate this. A little bit outside my box here, but I'd say the SDGs represent the world's common assignment to problems. They step outside of national problems, they step outside of regional, personal, corporate problems, and they really represent human problems, planet problems. And I think that the YA network does a good job. They have a good strategy of making that a priority as a foundation for students' education. Because we have to work as a global community. And the United Nations has done outstanding work over generations, which we are inheriting. And if the youth of today and the youth of the future generations want to make solid progress, they need to have this foundation so they can speak the common language. They can make common progress, and we can unite behind common goals. So, you know, I think the thing that I keep comes to my mind is that we like to say that the youth inherit the world, but I like to think that the youth inherit our choices today. And we need to be thinking in terms of what we leave behind for them to continue on. And so a foundation in the SDGs, I think, is just essential.
No, for sure. Like I couldn't agree more that we all rely on that foundations of SDG and building on from that framework, whether it comes to education, whether it comes to research and applying that framework everywhere. Thank you so much, Matthew. I put you on spot, and but it was a great response, I must say.
Good job.
In terms of, for me to understand the use of SDG framework and how YA emphasizes on that. So I'll take us quickly to the next question then, of community building, right? As is evidence from us all being here, YA brings in together students from a diverse group from different universities, different locations around the globe. So I'm coming to you, Jacob, for this one, like, because you're leading it, trying to organize, bringing everything together. So how does YA build a community of diverse students with a shared goal? And how does, with such a diverse community, how does this community motivate students to find the solutions?
Yeah, sure, Dul. So how does YA build this community? I'll start off there. We essentially, you know, we have these networks around the world, like we mentioned, and our goal is to get youth from really all corners of the world to be involved with our network. And we do that quite well. We have students from 5 different continents, and we bring these students together to share these perspectives across cultures. So that's kind of our diverse, you know, community building aspect. And we do that through student classes, we do that through conferences, we invite students to join our network from around the world, and that's one of the best things about YA. And kind of how does that help with student optimism, and how does that push us into a more optimistic kind of headspace around climate change? Is really that when you're working with a group of students with the same end goal, and I think the end goal of YA is to make progress on climate change, when you're allowing students to work with a group of people who all have that same goal and share in that same fight, it's hard not to be optimistic. You know, I've experienced it myself. Throughout my life, I've been in situations where all you hear about climate change is the negative, and that you know, and the challenges are just too big to face. And while these challenges are huge, what we're hearing from the IPCC and what we're hearing from, you know, scientific reports are huge, and that's not something to sidestep. But when you're working with a group of people who, despite all of that, is still pushing, you know, still pushing for progress, that is so inspiring to me and to all of us. And so working with that group and making sure you surround yourself with individuals who still believe that we can do something is so powerful, and really motivates us to be optimistic. Greta said in a recent interview, she said, apart from climate change, the only thing that really matters is friendship. That's kind of a loose quote. And you know, the YA Network has really taught me that as well. Building friends with these people and these other youth who are just as passionate and just as excited to do something about climate change has just propelled me into an optimistic headspace and made me want to work even harder to, you know, get these things accomplished. So that's I think where I come from, and I think my colleagues would agree that just getting youth together in one place, or whether that's virtually in a Zoom room, whether that's in person when we can finally be in person more often, is so important to build optimism and kind of feed off each other's energy.
Absolutely, personal experiences shape our life. So, and because the conversation is going, so I want to keep it going, and I would like to hear from Cody on the same for the same question on how does YA build a community of the diverse student, building on their own personal experiences, which might be very different, but then working towards to find solutions.
Yeah, and great answer, Jacob. We find solutions when we come together. We find solutions faster when we come together. And we all know that this is a really tough task during a global pandemic, when we can't even really be in the same room together. So during the same time, in my view, the YA Network has been thriving. And that's because they found creative and ways that promote critical thinking in students. And that's through global virtual conferences, it's through their fellowship and new leadership program that they've created, and it's through spreading the message in unique and relevant ways, like the Livable Future podcast, like doing these side events, and just getting out in the community. In my view, this sort of learning style and this sort of network will always motivate students to find a solution because it's a collaborative process and we're not stuck in it alone. We have each other here.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like I couldn't agree more with you. And as like the evident with the reality that we are trying to work in two different modes here, which we all know technically can be very challenging. So it was very interesting to learn about optimism and how our personal experiences, no matter how different they are, like shapes working towards a common goal, and how people living in or students living in different parts of the world are facing the same challenges. So, and this will feed into our next section, but of agents of change. And I want to ask this question then. So, for example, if you're talking about agents of change, what does agents of change looks like to you? And what does agents of change look like to you? And I'll ask Jacob this to begin with.
Sure thing, yeah. I think an agent of change is somebody who's ready to inspire others to be change agents themselves. So these are people who know that they have the confidence and also the skills to address global problems. Somebody who's ready to put that into full force and ready to tackle issues, but also somebody who, like I said, is able to inspire others to do the same and to equip others to do the same. And that's something that's so powerful about the youth movement, is that we are all not only working to learn to learn about these issues ourselves, and prepare ourselves to take on these challenges, but we're also willing to lend a helping hand to others, whether they're younger than us or just new to climate change issues in general, and pass along that knowledge and pass around our inspirations and our passions. And I think also to that, the youth movement is really kind of a reflection of all of us, when we see these projections out to 2050, 2070, 2100, these are dates in our lives, and these are dates that we'll be watching our kids grow up, going to college, getting married, and so we're intimately connected to that. And I think that's why youth want to be agents of change. We see that we need change, and sometimes we don't see that happening enough. I'd say often we don't see that happening quickly enough. And so we feel that urgency. We feel that need to be the change agents ourselves, because who's going to do it if not the youth? There are, of course, people in all generations working incredibly hard to solve this issue. But I think the youth are uniquely connected to it and feel that urgency more than most people. And that's a point of inspiration, and it's a point of passing that inspiration to other youth and other people. And so I think kind of involving this wider community of youth to be change agents individually, but also change agents as a global youth community is so important.
No, absolutely, Jacob Kenyon. Yeah, I think that's bringing change at the fundamental level is what we all should be striving for. I would like to go to Katie Barker on this one. What does agents of change looks like to you, and especially when we talk about gender balance? So how does gender balance plays a role towards to making agents of change, especially when we talk about youth and gender balance?
Yeah, thank you, Shardul. I think a key point here is agents implies that things aren't just happening to you. You have agency. You can do something about it. And I think that's important for all identities, including gender balance, including females, including non-binary people, and including people around the world who we aren't able to have here on this panel today, but we need all voices, and we need kind of all hands on deck in order to address this, and everyone has a part to play, and no voice should go unheard, because every person, when you think maybe you don't matter, you're just 1 in 7 billion, when you think about coming together, there are 7 billion of us to make a change. there are 7 billion of us with all the ingenuity and all of the resources available to all of us. And we need that diverse perspective. And then I think that that's, really that collaboration between people of different genders and people of different nationalities and different backgrounds. That collaboration really makes things possible, because when one voice calls out, hey, we should do this thing, that's great. But when you can get more people to agree and say, yeah, let's do this, that's when things really start to happen. And it's amazing to see through something like the Yeah Network how actually it's not that hard to do, to gather together and to keep going. And you really see change happen at that point. Some examples are at Colorado State University, our home institution, and where there's been some petitions that have driven from students, student-led, all students, drove the university to commit to renewable energy. And that commitment from the university then drove the community, the outer community, to commit to renewable energy goals. So you can really see this kind of trickle-down effect, and it all starts with just one person being passionate and sharing that with their friends. And then everybody else from there can gather together and really make things happen.
No, it's so Katie, now that I've gotten you into the conversation, and it'll be very difficult to move on from here. But for the next question, I want to bring you again, because when you talk about trickle-down effect and communities and university coming together, that's where getting involved, the next question is. So it's like, it fits perfectly into there. But before we move into that question, I just wanted to ask if Shane has joined in. Has he, or is it still technically it is difficult? All right, so I'm not hearing from him, so I think he's still not able to join in. So, so that was interesting for me, like getting so many examples of agents of change and how they both come into together. So I'll first, for my next question, I'll first go to Cody. Like, so why does YA feel like the organization in which you could have an impact? So why did you join? And I would like to hear from each individual panel on this one. First, Cody, and then I would want to come back to Katie as well.
Yeah, thanks, Shardul. As soon as I read the grant proposal for the Yeah Network, I knew I wanted into this. It's full of intelligent people. They have an abundance of resources, and that's matched with a passion to do good. And that, to me, says a lot. And I think that is what is going to be needed to have a lasting impact down the road. And when I think of the Yeah Network, I think of one of my favorite quotes. None of us are smarter than all of us. And I think Yeah embodies that so well. We all have different skill sets. When I look at every person in this network, not one of us are even remotely really the same. And that in the network is viewed as one of its strengths, because we can use our individual talents and we can help each other and we can grow. So that's why I wanted to join. Yeah.
No, that's a great motivating factor. And I would like to move on to Katie now. So why did you join? When we were talking about, you were mentioning about universities getting involved with the community and it only needs one person. So what motivated you to join Yeah?
Yeah, I think just the realization that I saw what Yeah was, and I saw that Yeah was something that was empowering students to make these networks that make things more possible and to really push their own agenda from their own heart and kind of go organically to where we need to go towards the future. And I saw the possibility that I might be able to offer something to this organization because I have a unique skill set that maybe I didn't see already represented, and that's really cool. And then I saw, wow, look at all of these other skill sets that I can connect with and things I can learn about from all of these other cool people. And it's really built on to make it possible to talk about climate change and talk about the environment in ways I never could before. Through our Livable Future podcast that Cody and I co-create, we talk with experts within the YA network and across our other various networks about how we can build this livable future together. And it's so important to have this network because I am not an expert on every single topic related to climate change, right? I couldn't be. There's no way to be. But with the other people, we're able to really get the message out there, and we can all learn collectively together and all take those next steps forward.
No, absolutely. It seems like you're always a step ahead of me, because the next question I wanted to ask you was about the specific skill set, but we'll get to that. So I want to bring in Ayush in. Like, why did you join? What motivated you, Ayush, and then Jacob?
Thank you, Shardul. So my story of joining or being introduced to EA is slightly different. So as a PhD student, I was looking at courses at Michigan Tech. And then I chose the course Climate Science and Policies. And our professor, Dr. Green, had a beautiful explanation that the whole course is structured around Conference of Parties 26. We would be studying about that. And so in my first class, I was introduced, okay, so this is a joint class with Yay Network. And so means I got in through the idea of, okay, this is the class where I get to go to COP26, I get to learn about climate change, what the leaders are doing. And then I am on the first class, I'm introduced to this Yay Network, where it's a joint class between like a lot of university students gathering online and discussing about SDGs. The whole class is structured in a sense that it's not like a normal classroom, like pen, paper, board, assignments classroom. It's more of a discussion and how the different students group together, separated by boundaries, different regions, and they're working on SDGs at its core. And the class is structured in such a beautiful way that it has to coincide with the COP. So that's we are at COP as a part of our class. And when we have to look at the network promoting the idea that like you have to go to COP and you have to prepare it, and the weeks and weeks of preparation goes into it, like researching about all these documentations, and every week we have a different guest lecture or like somebody from the different area of field that's coming and imparting like, okay, these are the documents you can read and these are the different issues. Like one week there's ocean, the other week there's somebody from Clean Air Act. So that's what like my motivation was initially it was to attend COP26, but later it get more into the how one SDG and different fields not related to my education, but now I can see the broader spectrum. So that's how I like DA as a network.
Great. No, thank you very much, Ayush. Like, of course, it's, as you say, it's not a traditional classroom setup. You do activities there. And we might run out short of time, but I really want a one-liner from Jacob and then from Keegan Sheila about why, yeah.
Yeah, sure thing, Shardul. So I think, yeah, it was a way, personally for me in my experience, to turn fear into optimism. So I mentioned this earlier, but there was a time in my life where I didn't think we could do anything about climate change. All I saw were scientists telling us that this is an issue, that they've known that it's an issue for decades. And then we see, politicians doing very little, especially early on in my life. And so, yeah, there was a time where to be frank with you, I thought we were doomed, And I saw Yeah as a way to kind of transform that and look at it a different way. And I don't think I fully realized that, even just joining Yeah. I don't think I fully realized that until I was able to, get more involved in the network. But once I did, I realized that fear could turn into optimism, by being surrounded by those students who are just as optimistic. So I think that's the power of a network like Yeah.
No, absolutely. Fear to optimism is, I think, could be my potential takeaway from the conference that we are still in it. So, Keegan, what is your one line of why did you join Yeah as to make an impact? I think Keegan is not able to join us due to technical reasons. So it was interesting to know the multitude of reasons of why our panelists joined YA, and this brings to me an even more important question, which earlier Katie Barker was touching on. It. What specific skills has YA taught you that makes you feel more capable of enacting change? We know that YA develops on SDG frameworks. It's about networking, people and students coming together from different parts of the world, working to work together on a common project using SDG frameworks. So what does coming to the COP and presenting? But doing all these, if you could highlight on what specific skills has YA taught you that makes you feel that, oh, you're more capable of enacting the change now. And because Katie Barker gave the example, I'm going to start with you, Katie.
All right. Yeah, I think more than anything, yeah, kind of opened the door. Actually, one of our PIs, Gillian Bowser at Colorado State, loves to say that it's her job to open the door and get out of the way. And that way of teaching has really allowed me and I think other students to kind of take the initiative in a way that maybe we wouldn't have. Maybe we would have followed a path, that was laid out for us, and instead we're able to push forward and go, okay, I can do this. I can reach out to this expert and moderate a conference, kind of whatever is needed in the moment, and that's been a cool experience. Yeah.
That's very interesting, and I think you mentioned that you worked on a podcast, right? So can you please briefly elaborate on that, because I found it very intriguing.
Yeah, absolutely. And Cody was also going to talk about this probably, so we'll talk about this. But yeah, the Livable Future podcast was an idea that actually Cody and I both had separately, and then Cody reached out to me and was like, oh, Katie, what do you think about this? And I was like, oh my gosh. And the idea is just that we wanted a way to reach the public and talk about how we can all do something to make a livable future in our future that we're all going to live soon. And we wanted to be able to communicate about the environmental science that's happening right now and about global change. And podcasts are a great way to do that. Of course, we didn't have all of the network to be able to build out. As I mentioned earlier, Cody and I don't know everything, right? We can research and we can talk about what we've learned, but ultimately it's so much richer of an experience, both for us and for our listeners, to hear from experts from around the world and all of these different cultural perspectives and yeah, just different expertise around the world. And it's really cool to be able to offer that.
No, that's a great answer. And before I say anything, I really want Cody Sanford to come in and share a bit more about building on the podcast, what Katie just shared.
Yeah, great explanation, Katie. So I want to briefly talk about the multicultural perspective that I've gained through the YA network. Somebody else can't teach that to you. You have to learn a multicultural perspective. That's not something any one classroom can do. And the YA network fully embodies that, but not just that, bringing students to the COP conference has been a game changer. I just want to briefly talk about this. Being in one place where there's so many people working for a better future that they'll never live to see really helps embody what we're trying to do with the podcast, just because we're trying to bring that sort of message to where people are, because not everyone can be at a place like this. It can never happen. So we have to start working to bring the message to where the people are and not just expect them to come to us, because that's not going to work. So when it comes to the podcast, I graduated in spring of 2021. during the pandemic, and everything was virtual. So instead of complaining, I knew I had to adapt. I knew that it was a new world that I was in, that I couldn't just expect to go back to the old ways. And that's really where the Yeah Network came in. I yelled out to all my instructors, all the students, Katie and John Jacobs, a friend, are the only two people in the Yeah Network who really joined. But the Yeah Network we owe a lot of thanks because, as Katie mentioned, we're not experts. We can't know everything, and the credibility that we've gained as science communicators by being involved with the Yeah Network has been tremendous in the momentum of our podcast. So really, I can't thank the Yeah Network enough for the skills that they've helped teach me from the start till ongoing. I view myself as a forever student, and I hope we all do. And yeah, that's my perspective on the Yeah Network.
No, thank you so much, Cody, Sanford. What is interesting for me to listen when I listen to all of you is Ayush mentions that it's not a traditional learning environment. It's not only about lectures. You are doing stuff, going into conferences, presenting. And while you are doing it, as you mentioned, Cody, and then Katie emphasized on it as well, developing skills as well. So even though it is not a traditional classroom, there's still skill development which is going on, which is required to solve today's problems. As much as I want to keep this conversation going, we're still on the clock. So I have to be moderator. So let's move on to the next question of networking. After all, we call it a Yeah network, right? It's at the fundamental of it is the networking. So the question which I want to ask, and I want to go to Jacob for this one, is how does connecting students to a wider network of professors, industry leaders, activists, policymakers, university officials, prepare them to be agents of change? Like, how does networking help? In what way? I hear it all the time. Networking is the key. But how? Like, how within the Yeah that works? I'm curious about that.
For sure. So this is one of my favorite parts about the Yeah Network. Essentially, we're connecting students to people who are already in positions of power, and we're basically giving students the platform to kind of push their ideas and push their perspectives up the pipeline to these people. For example, we have a conference in December, and we're having the students themselves reach out to our plenary speakers and develop a line of communication with them, but also develop a relationship with them. You know, introduce themselves, tell them about their interests, find out what the speaker's interests are, and kind of start a dialogue. And that's networking in itself. We're connecting these students to people who are working on the same problems and who have the power to do something about it. And that is so, so important. And kind of sharing student voice and giving them a platform for that voice. And I think that this networking aspect is also important in the sense that we're preparing students for when they leave the Yeah Network, when they're out of school or transitioning to a different phase of life. They have these skills, and they also have these people who they can call upon. And this is the faculty within the Yeah Network, but also these speakers at our conferences and other ways we get students to interact with people in power. We're letting these students have these relationships long after they've left the Yeah Network and into their career, and that's career building right there. And so I just think networking is such an integral part of the Yeah Network, but also something that is kind of done a little differently than a typical conference presentation or poster presentation where you might network a little bit, but then you never really speak to the person. Yeah really develops like concrete connections that are lasting, and that's really great.
Absolutely, absolutely. And before I move forward, I would like to hear from Matthew Twyman as well on what does he think about connecting students and the networking through Yeah?
Thanks, Shardul. Yeah, I'd like to just step back one pace real quick. And I'd say my experience so far with Yeah Network is that it's messy and that it does a good job of trying to represent reality. And, networking is not something that's easy. I haven't taken a class in it, and I don't know if that is really a thing. But, I think, me going in, people have different perspective of what it's like to have a class. And this class is really just kicking you right out into, right out into the wild. And trying to gain experience with building your own network, and for youth, kind of like what we were talking about before, giving them the reins and letting them teach themselves trial by fire, in a sense, of how to build their network and how to be positioned, I would say, to really be their own agents of change. I think Katie and all said it really great before. Gillian, she kind of opens the door for people, and I'd say that's really just representative of what the Yeah Network does. So, yeah, it's a taste of reality.
No, thank you so much, Matthew. It brought a smile in my face when you said it's messy, and no class can teach you networking. I don't think anyone offers a class on networking yet. I think closest it comes down to listening to all of you right now is a YA classroom, which shows the reality and of the messiness. And given you all are at Glasgow right now, so I can only imagine how messy it is. From last time I was there. And this perfectly goes into our next question about classrooms, right? So we're talking about YA is having a classroom. So I was curious about how does YA classroom looks like, right? We have emphasized here enough that it is a cross-cultural, multi-institutional setup. No class can teach us networking, but there are still skills which we are learning from it. So how does cross-cultural and multi-institutional setup of YA joint class prepare students to be agents of change? And full disclaimer, Ayush Chautani is a PhD student at Michigan Tech, so I know him personally. So I'm going to go to Ayush for this one. Ayush.
Thank you, Shardul. Thank you so much. So when you say the cross-cultural structure of the class, so as you said, the class is structured in such a way that from my perspective, as a PhD student from Michigan Tech, so we have the class weekly, and in structure in a way, so it's an online class, and the thing is the class, we are on Eastern time zone, and there are students joining in at Mountain time zone, and there are other students joining in from Australia. So there are different time zones. So it's a lot of when we join into class, we are distributed into groups. Okay, these are your SDG groups, because you have to work on certain SDGs throughout the whole semester. It's not like a one single project. And then you learn to coordinate with different time zone peoples, and you find out when do we want to meet? It's we are busy this time, you are busy that time. And then the perspective of cross culture comes into play. In my class, I am from India, I have a different perspective on different same problem. We have students from Ghana and United States and different parts. So. And we are looking at certain objectives. For example, in 1 week, we were looking at NDCs. So I have a certain point of view how I proceed to this particular problem because of my cultural baggage or cultural history. And for example, India has pollution, so I would looking at that kind of point of view for that particular problem. Then I learned from my colleague from Ghana, they have different issues, but we were essentially discussing about the NDCs. So that I had no idea about those issues. So, and then we have colleagues from United States. They talk about different point of views of the issues. So I guess the cross-cultural platform plays a lot of role. And then in my group, so I'm working on an SDG 12, and my groups are from mountain region. So I am not familiar with a lot of coffee plantations, so they are familiar with that. So they introduce me to all those new concepts that I get to study, and how coffee is culturally important in different parts of the world, and then how it's consumed in different parts of the world. So it's kind of a different aspect of there are different institutes, as well as there are different cultural students bringing out the different point of views for the same problem that we have to worry. And I guess this should be the way, because if I keep chasing the problem from one perspective, I would get bottlenecked. I would have a linear point of view of a solution. Maybe I get to a solution, but it will take a long time. But if you are looking the problem at say 10 different angles, maybe out of 10 you get 3 solutions. but now you know the broader spectrum. Like, okay, you can approach the problem to this side, like these cultural references help in these ways, or like X, Y, Z. So I guess like that's how I would code this problem. Like,
No, absolutely. Like the interdisciplinary and the multidisciplinary nature of problems and looking at the same problems from different aspects, I think it provides a multitude of solutions because there's no one single key to solve all the problems at all. Jacob, like you working as a YA fellow and like coordinating the event, putting all this event together with students from different part of the world. Uh, so what in your understanding, how does cross-cultural multi-institutional setup helps or has prepared you as a student to be an agent of change?
Totally. I think there's two really great things going on here. And one is this aspect of cross-cultural communication between students. Ayush said it much better than I could have. But we see so many ideas coming out of this exchange. When I sit in SDG group meetings, kind of check in on things and watch them, work through in their team chats. These students are expressing ideas or expressing their own experiences in life from their country or their region, and other students are reacting and saying, wow, I didn't even know that was an issue. I didn't know that was a problem that we need to solve. And they incorporate that into their project. They incorporate that into their end goal. And that is so exciting to watch students solve a problem that they didn't know existed a month before. And to watch that kind of come to fruition and come into a presentation and watch them run with that idea and include that person's voices or that voice is so great. And I think the second aspect of this class that's really interesting is an idea of exchange of knowledge kind of through the ranks or through different ages within the class. So we have grad students and undergrad students in this course. And similar to culture exchange, we have this exchange of kind of experience and the fact that these grad students are able to kind of pass along their knowledge, pass along their skills to these younger students. And these younger students are really eager to learn from these students who maybe have some more experience and some of these hard skills and soft skills because they're a little bit older. And that exchange is kind of, an extension of the youth movement, right? We're trying to get youth who have more agency, have more passion, have more kind of capability to make change, and get them to kind of push that down the line and push that to younger students who are excited to make a change but don't know how to do that yet. And that's so important.
No, thank you, Jacob. Like it actually makes me think that how setting up the panel, right? So we are talking about optimism, but that optimism is not in a vacuum. It is based out of people who, students, people, young network, youth network, who have skills and who have energy and interest of bringing that change, working towards that optimism. So it's not optimism in vacuum, and that's how we have progressed so far in our roundtable, and hopefully that is getting reflected in climate negotiations as well. And all of these points were like extremely relevant and beautifully tied together, at least from my understanding. I hope audience shares the same opinion. I really hope so. This session was originally planned towards bringing audience questions in and Twitter comments in, which we have received. But I want to acknowledge here that we had four more speakers who would have joined us from online, who are not present in Glasgow in person, but that couldn't happen because of the technical issues. But they've shared their views about YA and what they wanted to speak. So I just want to take this moment and briefly summarize the points that they wanted to highlight. And so the idea, one of the ideas that came out was that if we want the diversity and inclusion to be part of YA, and YA recognizes it and acknowledges it, that we need a broader panel. We had a broader panel, but because of the technical capacities, they couldn't join. One of the speakers apologized for not able to be here, and it's Shane, and wanted to thank YA for the network and for the opportunities that you have received, and outlining that YA empowers each other's voices and embraces our diversity and lift each other up, working towards a common goal. And Sarah was one of the panelists who couldn't join us today. And I'm quoting Sarah here saying, each of us has had a different experience with YA across the world, but we are so proud of everyone presenting today. YA as a network is so welcoming, and we are all learning patience and working with empathy. I think that is one thing which is required when we especially talk about climate change in bigger scheme of things. She also highlights different perspectives, and pushing boundaries or working with others is something Sarah has always held as an important experience for YA. So I just wanted to acknowledge here that we had a bigger panel who couldn't make it today because of technical issues. Thank you so much. We had like a good ongoing presentation from Agents of Change and the voice of optimism to Agents of Change and the use of SDG as a framework. But how do we move forward from here, right? So I would like to request Cody to highlight, so what is the key message that you would want to give of moving forward to youth of today?
Yeah, I want to say, don't look as your fellow people as the enemy. We have to stop being so divisive. We have to start looking towards solutions, and we have to listen to people. If we listen twice as much as we talk, I think we'd all be in a better place. And that's where I think we need to go in. We just need to honestly just stop talking about it and start making action happen, because the wolf is at our door in terms of climate change. As much as I'm filled with optimism, I'm also filled with a sense of urgency. So I think if we're talking about optimism, we also have to bring up the fact that we need to act now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like it's optimism and action that we require. And Katie Barker is someone who spoke on gender and about connecting university and communities together. What particularly would your suggestions would be, or call of action for the youth moving forward as a YA fellow?
Yeah, I think kind of building on what Cody was saying, optimism means action almost to me, like in the sense that in addressing global change. And it means knowing that your voice does matter, whatever your background is. You actually do have power. It may be a small amount of power right now, but you can build on that, and you can build on your skills, and you can spread your energy and your excitement about the possibilities ahead, because there are some big problems out there, but there's also a lot of us that are working to solve it. And we don't have to just wait for it to happen. We can all contribute to that.
No, absolutely. That's a great point. Actually, so there are people watching us through the live session, and we're getting comments and feedback back, and we are running out of time, but I cannot stop myself from sharing them. So Julia says that she really likes optimism coupled with urgency, right? So the single thing won't provide us the solution. We need to couple both of them together. And on the previous point of YA fellows and students and professors from working from different parts of the world, and this is what we were talking about yesterday, that how it is morning in one place and a midnight at other place. One of our panelists who couldn't join, Shane, he was up last night at 3 a.m. because that was the Australian time when we were having a conference here. But having shared that anecdote and the challenges that requires, the action which is required with optimism, Jacob, I would request you to share a call of action for the youth moving forward as a YA fellow working closely with the network.
Sure thing, Shardul. So those points on the slide, I think I can leave there. I think they kind of speak for themselves, but I'll just go over them briefly. So educate us, to tackle these problems, and provide us with the skills and tools to do this, and amplify our need for urgent action. But on a kind of similar note, I guess my request would be to firstly respect the knowledge we do have, about these issues, and respect our perspectives, but more importantly, honor our pursuit of new knowledge and help us get there. It's time to prepare our youth. The time has come, it's long past. We need to prepare our youth to take steps towards addressing climate change. And we're ready to advocate fiercely for climate change measures, But we need skills, and youth across the world need help to bring that to fruition and to actually make some actionable change. So if there's youth in your life, if you're part of an organization that has interaction with youth, equip them, please.
No, absolutely. For example, just building on what you exactly said for call of action and what YA provided, one of the panelists shared who couldn't be here, that YA gives the access, and YA gives that access for a wide range of global voices and insights beyond our single institution, with the single institution bringing a multi-dimension into it. Which I have a privilege here. Sitting and moderating this sessions. Looking at the comments online and the Twitter which I'm getting, I think we definitely have a lot more YA fellows for the future in running for sure. So the competition is going to be tough. But listening to individual stories here, and now we are close to wrapping up the session. Listening to these individual stories in a world where we have to start thinking about future alliances and the key to the problems that we are facing, I think Youth Alliance in higher education seems to be one of the master key, at least in my understanding, listening to all of you here. And my key takeaway from the session is that I want to become a YA fellow, and I'm praying that hopefully I'm not too old to apply. But before we depart, I want one line in one sentence from each of the panelists, a single line of action in one line. First, I'll start with Matthew.
The future belongs to the youth, period.
Future belongs to the youth. Katie.
Don't be afraid to take any small action and let that build into greater action collectively.
Perfect. Small actions definitely lead into bigger ones. Cody Sanford.
None of us are smarter than all of us. My favorite quote.
Perfect. Ayush.
We would not be judged by gods when we die, but by the future generations on how we left them the planet.
And Jacob, last but definitely not the least.
Yeah, I think the passion is there. Help us enact it.
No, with multiple students from different parts of the world working on different timelines, I can only imagine the amount of passion that goes into making of this. But before we depart, is there any other voice that I'm missing from the panel? Thank you so much. So, as I said, my takeaway from the session, I want to become a YA fellow. I want to get that passion into my working. So that would be all from our session today. Again, apologies that we couldn't start on time. It was a technical issue, and apologies that our other esteemed panelists couldn't join us. But before we depart, please do follow us on Twitter and use hashtag YaYouthNetwork. And we have another exciting event in person happening on 8th November, Monday at Action Hub, 2 p.m. GMT timeline. This is your moderator signing on behalf of everyone for today. Thank you, panelists and audience, for being here with us today, whether online or in person. Adios, au revoir, and namaste for joining us. Have a nice call. Thank you very much.